Welcome back to Time 100 Talks. I'm Time staff writer Raisa Bruner, and I'm joined today by Wnba and Washington Mystics star Elena Delle Donne. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
So you have recently been making some headlines when you shared an essay, an article explaining your attempt to opt out of playing basketball this season because you have a pre-existing health condition. You have chronic Lyme. Can you just talk us through why playing is really not an option for you right now and how this kind of came together?
Yeah, so obviously with COVID, the basketball season was going to look different. And we knew right at the beginning when they were coming up with this idea of a bubble that there were going to be people with pre-existing conditions that would submit their information, their blood work, whatever that may be, to a panel of doctors. And then that would either get approved or not approved. And if it was approved, you obviously don't have to go. And I've been battling chronic Lyme and other co-infections for over 10 years now. I've missed many, many games. Right when COVID began, I went into lockdown like very early just because I have no idea how my body will be able to handle it. I have immune issues and I can't fight Lyme. I haven't been able to fight many viruses over the years. So this one I knew right away, like I'm certainly at high risk and need to take care of myself. But unfortunately, there's so many unknowns about Lyme and doctors still want to deny that it can be chronic. They don't even want to acknowledge the other co-infections. So it was kind of just a whole nother reminder that I need to do so much more and speak out about Lyme because the panel of doctors denied my information and basically told me that I was fine and I should go play.
Yeah. And what is your status with the league and your team right now? How are things sitting for you?
Well, thank God I'm a part of a phenomenal organization that when they figured out what was happening, saw that I was denied, they right away stepped up. They said, you know what, stay home. I actually recently had back surgery in the off season too. They're like, just rehab your back, get ready for next season. So I'm very grateful for the Mystics for taking care of me. But, you know, unfortunately, this was something the Mystics shouldn't have had to step in and deal with. And it makes me realize that we have a lot more awareness to do, and I'll continue to speak out about Lyme.
What, if anything, concerns you about the league's decision to, deny you this medical exemption? And is there anything that you would like to see change going forward on that side?
I just think there was a lot going on. They're planning the bubble. They're doing the best they can do. And unfortunately, this medical panel didn't go the way probably that they thought it would go, or I thought it would go. And hopefully in the future, we would at least be able to come back and give more information to the panel if they have questions, instead of just being denied, that's that, you can't submit anything else. Or even having a Lyme literate doctor on the panel would have been great.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about your experience with Lyme. You wrote that you take something like 64 pills per day, which is wild. And as the general public, we often don't think of our athletes as also people with health situations and pre-existing conditions like this. So what do you think people should know about chronic Lyme and, how it works?
It's a daily battle. And what makes it hard about Lyme is often patients don't look sick, but they're very, very sick. And it's not something that just comes and goes. It's something I deal with every single day. Like, yes, I may be on the court competing and look like I'm fine, but I'll wake up that morning, I have to take all my supplements. I might feel awful and just have to push through it. So I think the biggest lesson is just to, never judge the book by its cover and understand that everybody's going through something and, listen to people.
Yeah. And the decision that you've had to make is one that a lot of Americans are facing or about to face, choosing between their health and risks and returning to work and potential professional repercussions. So for you, what do you think you learned from this process, or what advice would you give to other people trying to figure out their path forward?
It's really hard when you have to choose between your health or a paycheck. And I understand that like people are in really tough situations. And luckily, I mean, I'm blessed enough to have an organization that decided to take care of me. I've been able to save money. So I know that if this is a down year, I should be okay. But it's a horrible decision to have to make. And I feel awful for people who are in this situation because we still don't know much about COVID. And being a Lyme fighter, when we don't know much about a disease or ways to track it or see how it can affect you so differently, that's what's super frightening about COVID and the long-term effects of it. We're just still unsure. So for me, I was grateful enough to make the decision to be able to stay home, stay safe. But for those who can't make that decision and have to go, it's awful.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you started out with a pretty strict lockdown because you knew that you didn't want to be exposed. What, if anything, are you feeling in terms of missing out on the team's experience right now in the bubble? What is it like being a leader from afar? You're still very much involved in your teammates' experience, even though you're remote like the rest of us.
It's really hard to like watch them, especially if they're losing, like struggle through these losses and not be able to be there with them and compete with them and even be at practice the next day or in film with them. They're reaching out, they're trying to figure things out. I'm doing my best to lead from afar, but also let them lead and let them learn, because this is such a huge growing experience, especially for our young players, and it's only going to make them better. But it's like watching your like siblings go out there and compete and you can't be there with them. It's really tough. But we stay in touch. I try to do my best to lead from afar with a couple other players who've had to stay home. We kind of divide and conquer and we're doing our best.
Are you out here on Zoom all day like the rest of us?
Yeah, I've become best friends with Zoom.
That's the one thing that we all have in common.
Mm-hmm.
So other than the pandemic, this summer has also been tumultuous politically in the US. And Black Lives Matter activism is not something that the WNBA specifically is new to, but especially this summer, the league has used its platform to advocate for reform. Tell me a little bit about your experience with that and what you'd like to see happen going forward.
Yeah, I feel like our league has always been at the forefront of fighting for those that don't always have a voice, or for those that for some reason aren't listened to. So this is really nothing new, but it's been even louder this season, because when you have all those players in a bubble together, they can do that much more and do so much social change. And it's been inspiring to watch. It's been absolutely amazing to see what they're doing, and for them to be able to raise the voices of these Black victims who's faced horrible injustice. And still, Breonna Taylor, it's been over 5 months now, and unfortunately there's been no justice for her or her family. So we just have to continue to elevate the voices, to talk, to listen, to be compassionate. And my thing is, we have got to vote. And I know there's some barriers going on right now, but we have got to be persistent and just continue to vote.
Yeah. And so the WNBA, as you mentioned, has been part of this for a while, and it's been quite unified, especially given the bubble and everything. But there have been a few voices of dissent, specifically one of the team owners, Senator Kelly Loeffler. And I'm curious if you have any message you would like to send out to people like Kelly, who are less supportive of the Black Lives Matter activism.
It's funny how like people will say like a league shouldn't be political. Like, first of all, the word political, I don't even think that's the correct word to use. Like, we're fighting for humans who have faced such injustice and such unfairness. Like, that's not political, that's right or wrong. So that's my first thing I would say. And then from there, we've got a league of powerful women who can influence culture. So if you think we're just gonna play basketball and not speak up when we're seeing all these wrongs, that's not gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. And you should probably get out of our league if that's how you feel about us.
Another thing that you have been an advocate of for a long time is inclusivity, and especially when it comes to this shoe that you have with Nike, which you were inspired by your older sister, Lizzie, who has special needs, to create something that's accessible to everyone. Can you talk a little bit about that project and why it's close to your heart?
Yeah, that was probably my favorite project I've been able to do. It was over a 2-year process of trying to figure out a shoe for all. Just if you have special needs, if you're a boy, a girl, it doesn't matter your background, where you come from, it's a shoe for everybody. So that was the goal. And even growing up, I remember I was like a shoe guru. Like, I loved shoes. So if I got a new basketball shoe, I felt so cool about it. And then I would ask my parents, like, why does Lizzie always wear those like big, ugly boots, you know? And they explained it was so hard to get her into a shoe and have a shoe also with stability. So that has been something my entire life. I've just wanted Liz to be able to rock a cool shoe along with her peers. And we were able to do that. It took a team of some incredible shoemakers, and over the process of 2.5 years, they were fitting the shoe on my foot, on Lizzie's foot, on some of her peers' feet, and we came together and we're able to come up with this incredible shoe.
And the reason that shoes are important, especially in basketball, you know, it's not just a fashion accessory, it's both your equipment, but also such a huge part of the culture of the sport, and the mystique of the sport is tied to sneakers. And it's really rare also for women to have the opportunity to be involved and be the brand or the face of these kinds of projects. So what has it meant to you to be one of those faces, leading the league and also participating in something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it's motivated me that much more to make this shoe awesome, because I'd like to see down the road many WNBA players with signature shoes, where, you know, you go to a store and you can pick from all the men's shoes, the women's shoes, and wear both. You know, it doesn't have to be my shoe is only worn by girls and LeBron's shoes only worn by boys. Let's wear them all. Let's look up to these different figures. So for me, the shoe needed to be awesome so it could sell, and we can prove that women's shoes are just as cool and there need to be more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I imagine that since you are home, you've had a lot of time to reflect on your career, what's come before, what might come next. And especially since it's August, this would have been the Olympics right now, which is crazy to think about. I mean, is that something that you would like to consider next year? And how are you kind of planning ahead for what this pandemic has come to some conclusion?
It's been very different for me, because as an athlete, like, you have your goals that, you know, I've got Olympics this year, I've got to prepare for the beginning of season, I've got playoffs at this time. Like, I am very like regimented on my goals and what I need to do. And now with COVID, there's just so many unknowns, and I'm certainly preparing for Olympics for next year. I'm preparing for my season for next year. And I've kind of just had to start breaking it down to like daily goals just to stay motivated, because I'm at home. I'm used to training with a trainer. I'm used to training with my teammates. So at times I wake up and I'm like, here we go again. Like, it's just me in a room with my weights, or it's just me at the basketball court by myself. So being able to kind of just break it down to small goals. And I think that's what everybody needs right now, even if you're not a basketball player and it's just, you know, your job. It's just starting to feel monotonous, not being with people. But to break it down into small goals and achieve those goals and take care of yourself. don't beat yourself up if it's just a bad day and you haven't had a great workout. Go get it tomorrow.
Speaking of goals, the WNBA did achieve one of its goals earlier than in this year by signing a new collective bargaining agreement in January, which is a big win for women's sports in general. Do you think there's anything more to be done on that side? Are you happy with the progress that's being made in that part of the league?
I'm thrilled with the progress of the new CBA, and being a women's league, I feel like we really set a model for taking care of women we did so much for women, for the moms of our league who need childcare or need a stipend for their child. So I feel like we really stepped up in that category. We bumped up the salaries tremendously. Obviously, there's way more room to go, but once we see the revenue coming in, we'll be able to share in that process with the league. We see that the league is really starting to sign on sponsors, which is massive, and we're getting more games on TV, and visibility has always been the biggest thing for us. If we're visible, we can grow the fan base and we can continue to grow. So I think we're on a great route right now.
I'm curious, since you are separate from everyone involved in the bubble right now, if that distance has given you some perspective on, how you would like things to change with the team, or if you see them being unified together and you're missing out on that, what does that feel like?
Yeah, I mean, there's moments where, they're all wearing their Say Her Name shirts, and I'm like, oh, I want to be there. I want to be doing that too. But just knowing that at this point, I'm safe here and I can do my best to impact my team, impact the league from afar, and know that they are doing some incredible work, and just being a fan of it and watching and continuing to support them.
Especially for people who have been looking to you for years as a star of the league, and now you announcing or sharing your experience with chronic Lyme. What would your message be to other maybe young girls or aspiring athletes who might not have realized that you can play and you can live with a pre-existing condition, and how have you approached that, and what would you like to say to them?
My whole thing is never let a label stop you from achieving your dreams. When I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue and all these different things, it sounds like there's no way I can play basketball anymore. I'm too ill. But if you just focus in on those labels, you'll feel sicker. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I get myself to feel good in a day? All right. And then I'm going to go play basketball. So just never let anyone get in your way. Never let a label keep you from doing what you want to do. And there's going to be days that are brutal, and there's going to be days maybe you don't get out of bed, but that's okay. Don't beat yourself up, and just get back to it when you're feeling better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Elena, for joining us today, and best of luck as you continue with your lockdown.
Thank you. You too.